Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. One of the biggest pro-Palestinian supporters on the media, MEHDI HASSAN, was on Piers Morgan a few days ago. Now, as someone that actually generally very much agree with this guy on most of his political takes and where he actually stands on, I generally agree with him. I am a big supporter and a big fan of him. But with this one, I think I very much actually disagree with him. Without wasting too much time, we'll get right into the video. But before we do get into the video, if you're new around here, subscribe to the channel. And also, if you enjoy the content, drop a like. Let's get into it.
Mehdi, great to have you back on Uncensored. Last time you came on recently, we reached agreement over what is going on in Gaza. I concurred with your view that it was now crossing almost every line. It wasn't just my view, the view of former Israeli prime ministers, of allies of Israel, and so on. But we have a separate situation here. And I'm just curious, I've seen what you've been saying publicly about this Israel attack on Iran. If you're Israel and you see that report from the Atomic Agency, which appears to suggest that Iran has been lying, obfuscating, covering up, not allowing proper inspections and so on, and now appears to have reached 60% enrichment of uranium, which is the next stage it can reach, where now it can be imminent, it can be within months that it could potentially get to nuclear power. Can you at least, without agreeing with it, can you understand why Israel has felt threatened by that report?
So, Piers, thanks for having me back, and I'm glad you started by asking about the IAEA report, because I know you brought it up with your panel as well. And I just want your viewers at home to be clear, because you described it accurately a moment ago, what the report says. I've read the 22-page report, came out May 31st, declassified. But on Friday, I was disappointed to see you tweeting about, you said the report exposes an imminent nuclear threat from Iran, which could justify a preemptive strike. What we saw on Thursday night from Israel was not a preemptive strike. It was a preventive strike, which is illegal under international law. It's what George Bush and the neocons claimed the Iraq war was against Saddam Hussein, which you and I opposed, rightly so. And that IAEA report does not expose an imminent nuclear threat. It says what you just said it says. It says that they haven't been cooperating very well. It says they're level.
Oh my god, like these people that are actually on this side, right, they seem to think the only way something, or the only way this situation can ever lead to the conclusion of an imminent nuclear threat is literally they've built the nuclear weapon and they are ready to fire it. That seems to be the only way, that the way they talk about this situation, that seems to be the only way they can actually see it. If all this circumstantial evidence, like enriching uranium to a certain point which you've already had a contract and agreed on not to, you're not allowing the IAEA to be able to do full inspection of your nuclear power plants or your nuclear setup, wherever it is. You're building nuclear sites underneath the ground that is held in secrecy, that nobody else is going to have any access to. All these things, right, when you add them together, and I think it's generally reasonable to conclude you're probably doing something that you don't want people to know about. And if you don't want people to know about it, it's probably worth people not knowing about it. Like, generally, I don't understand how you can't see that when you say a nuclear imminent threat, it doesn't literally mean they've launched the nuclear weapon. It just means they are working towards a nuclear weapon, which they've already agreed not to. The way they talk about this, like that report, it makes it seem like they're just talking about things that have no relation to it at all. Clearly, all these things are being done for them to be able to get a nuclear weapon. If that is the case, that is an imminent threat. Clearly, because they've agreed not to, and it's not good for Israel or the United States to have it. Like, I don't understand.
Level of cooperation has been, quote, less than satisfactory. It says some of their technical answers about their program have lacked credibility. It says they've impeded.
Yes, all these things are circumstantial evidence. That's what happens in court. You take a buckload of circumstantial evidence and you add it together, and then from there you can infer a certain conclusion. That's how everything is done, right? If you want to charge someone with a crime, you don't actually see them committing the crime. You look at things like the time, if they have alibi or not, the DNA on them, the certain action, do they have motives? All these things doesn't literally prove they've done it. It just shows your behavior and the way you've acted and the motives you have clearly points towards a certain conclusion, which is the same thing here. They don't actually have to have the nuclear weapon. They don't.
Some of the inspectors, it says that they were working on some kind of military program pre-2003, which is what US intelligence has also said. Those are all bad things, Piers. You and I can both agree those are bad things, and Iran should not be doing those things. And the IAEA board voted to say they're in breach of their obligations. But that's not an imminent nuclear threat. The report does not say Iran poses an imminent nuclear threat. Your tweet was wrong on Friday.
I think it's as I just said. When it says 60% enrichment of uranium, it's the next stage that somebody who wants to create a nuclear bomb, right? So imminent. Look, what do I mean by imminent?
Exactly. It's the next stage. Like that's the next conclusion. Why would you want to enrich uranium to certain that kind of from they agreed on 5%? Now you're on 60%. What do you think they're trying to do with that? What do you think? Genuinely, like, come on.
It can be weeks, months, a year, whatever, but they've reached a stage of enrichment.
No, it can't, Piers.
But they have the capability to take it to another stage and create a bomb.
Yes. So let's find more agreement between us.
Yeah.
I agree. That is capability, right? They have enough highly enriched uranium to build up to 9 bombs, I believe. They have 400 kilograms of uranium.
So that is an imminent threat if it's in the wrong hands, right? We can agree on that.
No, it's not. No,
but why not?
No,
yes, it is.
Unfortunately, having a civil nuclear program is totally fine. Having enriched uranium is fine. The issue is if you weaponize it and have a weapons program.
What do you think they're trying to do with 60%? That's the next step. So what do you think they're trying to do with this? What, they're trying to play with it?
And Tulsi Gabbard, no friend of radical Islam, Donald Trump's director of national intelligence, said in March that the US intelligence community's consensus view is that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon.
That's, you see, what he just said is actually quite interesting, because obviously earlier it says about the 2003 weapons of mass destruction from Iraq, like when it comes to America actually invading Iraq under Saddam Hussein, right? He says, because the problem is the intel that actually got America to actually make the move on Saddam Hussein in Iraq was the CIA. It was the intel from America. So they've obviously undermined, he's totally undermined the CIA's intel when it comes to seeing whether or not the Middle East and all these countries are developing some sort of weapon of mass destruction or nuclear weapons. He's totally undermined it with 2003 false claim. But now he's saying, yeah, well, the US intel has just said that these people are not building nuclear weapons. You've just undermined the whole US intel a minute ago. How can you then use that as a barrier to be able to make a claim that, oh, look, it's actually wrong, they're not actually building a nuclear weapon? Clearly, they've shown that this intel, when it comes to what's going on in the Middle East, can clearly be wrong. Why the hell would you use it now? Why would you use America's intel to justify why they're not building a nuclear weapon? Why would you use that? The reason why it's good that the IAEA are the ones doing it is because they're not American. They have no loyalty towards America. They are an independent institution. So clearly, it makes way more sense to use that rather than an intel you've totally undermined a few minutes ago.
Not have a nuclear weapon, has not authorized a nuclear weapons program. The IAEA, Piers, in that report, you must have seen the line in their summary, said there are no credible indications of an ongoing, undeclared, structured nuclear program. Even the IAEA says there's no nuclear weapons program. Their boss, the IAEA chief, Piers, said last week, you cannot attack nuclear facilities in Iran. So, no, it's not an imminent threat. And under international law, Piers, this is the key point. If a weapon is a year away, you cannot say we're under imminent threat. That does not give you a right to self-defense. Otherwise, everyone in the world would go around just bombing people. You and I oppose Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We agree on that, right? Putin claimed that Ukraine would one day attack Russia with NATO support. That's why I'm doing it. That was a bullshit argument. You and I...
That is so different. That is so different. It's not even about the truth in the claim on whether it's even possible. That claim, it's just a facade. It's totally different. Anyone reasonable wouldn't actually think, okay, is Ukraine actually going to attack Russia one day or not, right? That truth in that statement, it isn't even warranted to be researched for. We all know that statement is a facade for a different motive. It's a different motive that's there. It's not that. But this motive that we're actually talking about, whether or not there will be the nuclear weapon or not, you can actually assess it to see whether it's true or not. But the Ukraine one, it's absolutely not even in the picture at all. It's not the reason. So you can't even see whether or not they're actually going to... Why would the hell would Ukraine invade Russia? What? That makes no sense.
I rejected Putin's bullshit argument in Ukraine. You and I have rejected the Israeli bullshit argument now in Gaza. You don't believe what they're saying about Gaza. I don't know why you're believing them on this when you were rightly calling out the bullshit from the UK and the US.
Because it's the IAEA, independent institution, that's actually doing it. And this is not about Israel or America. This is someone reading the reports and actually making the conclusion by himself. This has nothing to do with America influencing his opinion. Absolutely not.
In 2003, over Iraq, Saddam Hussein was not an imminent threat, and Iran was not an imminent threat, and Israel attacked them illegally last week while there were nuclear negotiations going on. Piers, one last point. If Israel cared about stopping a nuclear weapon, you would go back into a nuclear deal that prevents Iran from a weapon. And guess who they killed on Thursday night? Not just generals, Piers. They killed Ali Shamkhani, the lead nuclear negotiator who was supposed to be in Oman yesterday with the Americans and who went on NBC a month ago and said, we're very close to a deal, we're willing to give up highly enriched uranium.
But Trump did say, didn't he? Trump did say, but hang on the deal, Trump said, look, you've got 60 days, right? And Israel attacked on day 61. In other words, they gave Iran a chance to negotiate.
Oh my God! Come on! That's a load of bullshit. How can you say that?
But that is what Trump said.
Well, Trump's a liar. Why were they meeting in Oman on Sunday then?
Well,
if there were only 60 days, why were the Americans supposed to be meeting yesterday?
All I'm saying is, it is a fact. The sequence of events.
So the quiz.
Hang on.
It's not a fact, though, is it? It's not a fact.
It is a fact that Trump said 60 days.
Were they not?
It is a fact. He said 60 days.
But that's a lie because but that wasn't a 60 days. Otherwise, we bomb you. That was Netanyahu. By the way, let's be clear.
I agree.
Netanyahu wants this war more than Trump.
I agree. I'm just saying that Netanyahu.
Of course. Well, it says that like, oh my God, that's such a revelation. Of course they do. Because clearly that Iran is a threat to Israel, right? They're closest to Israel. And also they've been funding terrorist proxies against Israel. So we say Israel want this war. Of course they do. They want to be saved much more than America. America is safe. Iran is not going to attack America unless they actually get something like a nuclear weapon. They're not going to send Hamas or Hezbollah to America. Of course Israel wanted more. That's not like a gotcha moment at all. You made that, what?
He did wait till day 61 of Trump's 60 days get a deal done.
No, because why was there a nuclear negotiation scheduled on Sunday between the Americans and the Iranians, which is now not happening? Who benefits from that? Netanyahu. The hawks who want a war. They don't want a deal. Otherwise you wouldn't kill
unless
the
you think that Trump tacitly wants this to happen, which he might well do.
Maybe. I mean, I don't try and mind read Trump. You can. You know him better than me. The man's a liar. He's erratic. He's unhinged. Who knows? I mean,
that is true. I do agree with that. This is what I mean. I usually agree with him. That is true. He's a liar. He's erratic. Blah 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 blah. But this isn't about Trump or America. It's just about reading the situation. Like it doesn't have to it doesn't require America making a statement. Then you follow it. This is just like a personal opinion that you actually assess by yourself.
He claims to be anti-war. Remember all that bullshit? I came on your show last year, Piers. How many times did I hear people telling me bullshit about Trump being anti-war?
Anyone that actually said America, I vote for Trump because it's anti-war, it's so stupid. Genuinely, it's so stupid. That argument to me, all these maggots talking about anti-war, it never makes sense. If 9/11 was to happen again, are you going to go to war or not? Of course you have to. You have to retaliate. So what are you talking about anti-war then? Like, it makes no sense. People, they just say that. It's like, sometimes you do have to go to war.
He went to Michigan and said, I won't get involved in a war in the Middle East.
Yep, this is true. And also, this is actually Trump's fault from actually pulling out the deal back in 2018. This absolutely is true. Absolutely. You can partially blame it on him. That's why all this talk about, oh, I'm a peace negotiator. No, you're not, okay? You don't start something by moving out the nuclear deal, and then they obviously enrich uranium and they're building a nuclear weapon, and then when you take it down, you're like, oh, I deserve the Nobel Prize. No, you don't, because you started it. This actually does fall on Trump a lot, actually.
Here we are now, several hundred people dead in Israel and Iran, completely preventable conflict, done with Trump's blessing. And as I say, if you're worried about highly enriched uranium, blame Trump, right? He tore up the nuclear deal in 2018.
Yep, absolutely. This is something we do agree on. This is why I say we generally agree. Absolutely. That is like a fire starter to this.
In 2018, Iran was enriching uranium at what percentage? 3.67%. And the IAEA said, yep, we verify it. We have no complaints. We verify that Iran is in accordance with this deal. And Trump tore it up. And today, 60% highly enriched uranium, 400 kilograms. That's on Donald Trump.
Yes, absolutely.
At the JCPOA.
But aren't you just there? aren't you just, if you don't mind me saying, aren't you just explaining very...
But I know he's actually just explained it as to why they actually building a nuclear weapon. Trump pulled off the nuclear weapon deal. That gave them an incentive to build a nuclear weapon. He's just done it.
Particularly why Israel has got so twitchy about this.
Yeah.
From 3% to 60%.
He's just explained it. He absolutely just explained it right there. The incentive to build nuclear weapon was Trump ripping up the nuclear deal. He just did it.
That's not a small...
But who did that, right? But
you can blame who you like. You can blame who you like, but the way you described that sounded to me like you were presenting a fast-moving, imminent threat.
No. Okay, it's a good question. Let me answer it. No, what I was presenting was that there was a deal that worked. Trump and the Israelis tore up the deal that worked. Now Iran is definitely, you and I have already agreed, that they have potential to be closer to a bomb today than they were in 2018. So the solution is not then to go to war and increase the chances of Iran rushing for a bomb. The solution is to go back into a deal, to negotiate an agreement. Piers, just for your viewers, there are only two ways. Every military expert agrees, every US general agrees. There's only two ways to stop Iran from having a nuclear bomb. Number one is to invade and occupy the country and destroy every facility yourself. Number two is to have an agreement in which Iran agrees to stop enriching uranium at 60% or 90%, right? Those are the two options.
Actually, I don't agree with that.
If
I
other
don't
people
agree.
prefer invasion
There's actually
or
a third option, because
what's the third option? What is it?
Well, the third option is doing exactly what Israel's doing now, which is using air power.
No.
Controlling the skies over Tehran and using intelligence gathered by Mossad, apparently, reportedly, and using specific intelligence to target specific commanders, scientists, and nuclear sites. I mean, that's the third option.
Well, that's not a third option because it doesn't stop the nuclear program. All it does is delay it. And in
but
fact,
have you spoken to
who
any
agrees with me?
military
Israel's
people?
own national-
Be honest, Mehdi. Have you spoken to any military? I've got two former British Army colonels in my family. I ran this past them earlier. Both of them thought this was justified, right? Who are the military commanders you've talked to who do not think this is justified?
I mean, that's such a dumb question.
Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff under George W. Bush said there's no way you can get rid of Iranian nuclear program without boots on the ground. And by the way, you know who said on Friday? Israel's own national security advisor said on Friday, there is no kinetic solution to this. Air power cannot do this, right? Because some of their facilities are underground.
I mean, absolutely. The best way to do it is an agreement, okay? At the end of the day, it is an agreement. Agreement is the best way. But if you give them time to come to the table for an agreement, but there is no agreement, then you have to go all in.
Scientists who killed can be replaced, right? You cannot end Iran's nuclear program via bombing. And by the way, Israel tried this before in 1981. They always hold it up as some great example. They bombed Saddam's nuclear facility in Osirak. Everyone who studied that since, nuclear scientists, weapons experts, say that actually that didn't delay Saddam's bomb. It accelerated Saddam's interest in nuclear weapons. He actually launched a covert nuclear program at another site over the next 9 years till obviously the Iraq invasion of Kuwait, right? So put yourself, Piers, you asked me a question at the beginning. It was a great question. Put yourself in Israel's shoes. We should always have empathy for whoever it is, enemies, allies. Let me ask the question back to you. Put yourself in the shoes of an Iranian official sitting in Tehran today who looks at a map of the region and sees Israel with nukes, Russia with nukes, Pakistan with nukes, India with nukes, nuclear-armed America next door in Iraq. Wouldn't you want nuclear weapons?
That is a good argument. Absolutely, it's a good argument. But also, you now put yourself in Israel's shoes and put yourself in America's shoes, or in the West in general. Put yourself in their shoes. When Iran over there is continuously saying death to America, death to Britain, death to Israel. Now you put yourself in their shoes, and then they are working on nuclear weapons, and you want to say, oh, why the hell are you actually seeing Iran getting a nuclear weapon? Why are you seeing that as a big problem? Well, them declaring death to Israel is a big problem. Clearly, them funding Hezbollah, them funding Hamas, all these proxy all these proxy like terrorists, them funding it clearly is a signal that, hey, them getting a nuclear weapon clearly isn't a good sign at all. It clearly isn't a good idea. It jeopardizes the safety of the United States and Israel. So when you say all these countries have nuclear weapons, that's fine. You can say that. But India isn't funding terrorism. North Korea isn't funding terrorism. Like, all these countries, they're not funding terrorism against Israel, against the United States. Iran is. So clearly that is the reason why it makes no sense. Any country that wants to develop a nuclear weapon, you have the autonomy too. But if you're declaring death to another country, don't be surprised when that country tries to stop any program you have towards getting a nuclear weapon. Don't ever be surprised.
against nukes.
Yeah, but if
put
you're the
yourself in that
regime,
person's
but
position.
Mehdi,
If you look at,
but Mehdi, you wouldn't dispute.
would you not think it's rational
Well,
to
my
have
response
nukes
to
to
the
protect?
It is rational, but unfortunately, it's also rational to stop someone that chants death to you to try and stop them from getting a nuclear weapon. That's the problem.
To be this, you wouldn't dispute that Iran's tentacles have been fueling for a long period of time Hamas, the Houthis, Hezbollah, and I presume you wouldn't also dispute that the tactical attack on Hezbollah through the pages, 3,000 of them targeted in a very precise way, that has led to Hezbollah basically. Well, it's led to Hezbollah basically throwing the towel in and saying we're not going to get engaged in this war with Iran, which is a very significant moment in this whole war, I would argue.
If your question is, has Israel degraded Iran's supports abroad, its proxies, 100%. But that's irrelevant to the rightness or wrongness of this. I'm asking you to put yourself
but all
in the
those
position
proxies want to
of
kill
an Iranian
Israelis,
government.
right? So that's why I think that Israel has a right.
Let's not get.
That's the point. That's the
As you
point.
agreed, Israel's doing much of the killing right now. But let me just ask you this. Again, Ukraine gave up nukes, got invaded. Saddam Hussein gave up nukes, got invaded and executed. Gaddafi gave up chemical weapons, got invaded, raped and killed. Again, if you're the Iranians, are you not looking at this thinking, this means we need nukes? I would rather not give them an incentive to go get nuclear weapons. I'm anti-nuclear weapons for anyone. So I don't want Iran to have nukes. But the best way for Iran not to have nukes is not to attack them. That makes countries want to have nukes more. It's just rational to go, oh, the countries who have nukes like North Korea, they don't get invaded. So why give them an incentive to get more nukes? Why not?
Also, on the other hand, you can say that's a good argument, but also on the other hand, don't chant death to America, death to Israel, consistently fund proxy terrorist activities against Israel. Then you're giving them an incentive to stop you from getting your own nuclear weapons. That's the problem. If you stop funding terrorist groups, then you will give Israel no incentive to try and stop you, whatever you want to do. So it works both ways. It absolutely works both ways.
Actually have a weapons of mass destruction free region. You know which country does have nukes in the Middle East? Israel, in violation of UN Security Council resolution.
That's fine. They also say this, but at the end of the day, nuclear weapons in Israel will never ever be used unless the United States declares it and authorizes it. If they do launch nuclear weapons without the United States authority, America will literally pull every support from them.